This video is brought to you by StatHead from the creators of Pro Football Reference. I absolutely love this product and I use it religiously to do research for a ton of my videos, and have for quite some time. StatHead is the best database out there and gives you just about anything you could ever have hoped to research. I'm going to show you just how easy it is to use. Kirk Cousins was incredible last night, throwing for 509 yards. I want to see how that compares to other quarterbacks in Falcons history to see if that was the franchise record for most passing yards, and if so, what the previous records look like. So I went to the player game finder, sorted by passing yards, filtered to just include the Falcons, and just like that, we can see that Kirk Cousins' game was the top total, breaking Matt Ryan's record of 503 yards in a 2016 game against the Panthers. Oddly enough, every quarterback to throw for over 400 yards did so in the 21st century, except for Steve Bartkowski in a 1981 game against the Steelers. So I just click on that box score, and I can learn more about the game right there. This is not sped up or altered in any way whatsoever. It is that quick and that easy. It's only $9 a month for football, or $16 a month for every sport. But if you use my code JG9 at checkout for an annual subscription, not only does it help the channel out a ton, but you get a 20% discount. Link in the description below. So go to stathead.com and sign up today. October 3rd, 2024. It's week 5 of the NFL season, and we have an absolutely critical game on our hands down in Atlanta on Thursday Night Football between two NFC South rivals in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons. This is a big game, and not just because this is a divisional game early on in the season, and not just because this is a game under the lights on Thursday Night Football in front of a national audience, but rather because this game is for first place in the division. The Buccaneers enter this one with the division's only winning record 4 weeks in, as they find themselves at 3-1. However, the Falcons find themselves at 2-2, with a win tying them with Tampa and giving them the head-to-head tiebreaker. Safe to say, there's a lot to play for in this one for both of these teams, and in a hard-fought game like this that means a ton, every decision matters. I don't think either of these coaches got the memo on that, however. But before I talk about coaches making bad decisions, if you want to make a good decision right now, you can do so by hitting that like button down below, subscribing, and turning on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. We post every single day about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL, from 2024 to 1924. So if you like that sort of stuff, then this is the place for you. Thanks in advance for your support as we try and hit 70,000 subscribers. So far, this game has turned into a fun shootout that is surprisingly enjoyable for a Thursday night game. After some back and forth action on both sides, the Falcons find themselves with the football trailing 17-14 midway through the second quarter. Atlanta has the ball in field goal range at Tampa's 38-yard line, and Kirk Cousins has played lights out thus far. So if he can keep this drive alive, then Atlanta has a chance to tie it up or take the lead. First down, and Cousins drops back to pass, but is immediately pressured by Jordan Whitehead, who comes from the secondary to bring Cousins down. Cousins gets rid of the football, but it's an incomplete pass, and even if it was a fumble, the Falcons fell on it. Good news, after that disastrous play, the Falcons, regardless, retain possession. Bad news, the referees call intentional grounding. Seeing as Cousins was under duress, there was no one nearby, and he was in the pocket. So the Falcons are faced with 2nd and 18, and on this play,
Tampa Bay has challenged the ruling on the field that the quarterback threw a forward pass. Previous play is under review. Okay. Timeout on the field.
Wait, why are you challenging this? Todd Bowles, why are you challenging this? You got an 8-yard loss. The play was clearly a forward pass, and even if it was a fumble, Atlanta recovered, so it actually hurts you. There is quite literally nothing good that can come from this. Todd Bowles, why are you challenging this play? Why are you challenging this play?
After reviewing the play, the ruling on the field stands as called. Tampa Bay will be charged with its first time out of the half and has used its first challenge of the game.
Welcome to Dumb Decisions. Before I break down what happened here, this whole series is about taking an in-depth look at decisions made during games that were clearly awful from the start. This isn't something look bad in hindsight. Rather, this is something look awful almost immediately. These are moves where your gut instinct tells you right away that there is no way this could possibly work. And sure enough, your gut instinct was smarter than that of an NFL head coach. And for this one, we're going to take a look at the mind of Tampa Bay Buccaneers head coach Todd Bowles. Yeah, I can't quite figure Bowles out, because even though the Bucs are winning games under his watch, his in-game management skills are abysmal, and he'll have about 2 or 3 games a year where his brain completely craps out and he decides to call the worst game plan imaginable that costs his team an easy win. We saw his awful clock management skills last year in a game against the Houston Texans, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. We saw whatever the heck happened at the end of the divisional round game against the Detroit Lions, where he didn't realize the clock situation and didn't take his timeouts at the end of the game to try and get the ball back, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And now, we've got this. We've got, well, whatever the heck this was, which might have been, no exaggeration, one of the dumbest challenges in NFL history. I've seen some dumb challenges before. We have the John Fox challenge, where he challenged the spot thinking his player got into the end zone, and in reality, his player lost control of the ball before it got into the end zone, so his challenge actually resulted in a turnover. We had the John Harbaugh challenge last year, where he challenged the scoring play that was very obvious, which you're not allowed to do, seeing as all scoring plays are automatically reviewed. You can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And now, we've got this. Todd Bowles has entered the discussion for the dumbest challenge ever. So with that being said, let's take a look at why throwing the challenge play here, instead of just leaving it in your pocket, is a really bad idea. And I want to make it extremely clear. Most of the time, even if the challenge is unsuccessful, I'm not going to put a coach on this segment for getting a challenge wrong, especially if it's a possible turnover, and especially if it's the first half. Coaches have a different angle from everyone else, so maybe they don't have the best view of something, or they saw something differently. Coaches don't have the benefit of watching plays in slow motion. Coaches are told from upstairs whether or not it's a good idea to challenge the call on the field. They're usually given the green light from someone else as to whether this is worth a challenge. So just because you lose a challenge doesn't mean you're going to end up on dumb decisions, because to do that would defeat the purpose of this segment, especially when a lot of these plays that are being challenged are bang-bang plays in real time and are even close in slow motion and with zoom-ins and close-up angles. But this challenge? I've got nothing. I've got absolutely nothing. This was one of the worst challenges I've ever seen. Because anytime you're going to challenge something, you have to weigh the pros and cons of it. That comes with any decision in life, but when you throw the challenge flag, same thing applies. Weigh the pros and cons. The obvious con with a challenge is that if you get it wrong, you lose the challenge and you lose a timeout. Maybe the loss of a challenge isn't a huge deal anymore after the new rule change this year, which is a long overdue rule that if you get one of your first two challenges correct, you get a third. And maybe the loss of a timeout in the first half isn't a huge deal compared to the loss of a timeout in the second half, where you might need it to stop the clock and get the ball back, or use the middle of the field on offense. That doesn't mean you just waste those challenges and timeouts like they're nothing, but obviously, calling a challenge in the first half is a lot different than calling a challenge in the second half, depending on the score and the timeout situation. So even though there is an obvious con with losing a challenge, it's not the end of the world in the first half, relatively speaking, especially when you hadn't challenged anything yet. If the pro is that you get the ball back, or get a huge difference in yardage, and the con is that you lose something that might not be all that significant in the grand scheme of things, considering how early we were into the game, alright, I get it. But there were two problems with this sequence in particular. Number one, this wasn't even close. This was blatantly obvious. If this wasn't ruled a pass, I think half the audience would have scratched their heads, and the other half would have stopped watching the game entirely in protest of the state of officiating. I mean, Kirk Cousins literally has control of the ball the entire way. He's throwing it forward. He's moving his arm the way that you would move your arm on a forward pass. The ball travels forward. The arm is not hit. The ball is never loose. This is the textbook definition of a forward pass. There is no way you were ever going to win this challenge. The referees could have been possessed with Stevie Wonder serum, and you were still going to lose this challenge and lose a timeout. Which, again, isn't the biggest deal in the first half, but you don't want to do it, and it could come back to bite you later in the contest. However, let's say that, by some absolute fluke, you do win this challenge. By some miracle, the referees decide that you were right, and you know the rules better than anyone else, and somehow, this actually was a fumble. Guess what happens? The Falcons actually benefit! The Falcons freaking benefit from this! You can fumble the ball forward on first down, and the ball is placed at the spot where it's recovered. It's not returned to the spot where it was fumbled. As things stand, you have the Falcons facing 2nd and 18 at the 46-yard line. If this was a fumble, guess what? The Falcons recovered the ball. The Falcons were the one that fell on it, not you. The Falcons. Number 64 on the Falcons was the man who recovered this ball. You can see it right here. At the bottom of this pile, the Falcons have control. The Falcons made the immediate recovery. The Falcons recovered at the 34-yard line.
You asked Terry at the break, but Atlanta actually recovered it, so if it is a fumble, the Falcons got on top of the ball.
Exactly.
So if you won this challenge, and you were correct in that this was a fumble, the Falcons are faced with 2nd and 6 at the 34-yard line and are in field goal range. You just gave them a gain of 4. If you lost this challenge and were incorrect, then the Falcons have 2nd and 18, but you lost the challenge and a timeout in the process. Explain to me how that makes any sense. Explain how the logic makes any sense there. You are, quite literally, guaranteed to lose in some way, no matter what the outcome of this review is. It's like if I bet $5 on the Dolphins to win, and I get $9 in return. And then, at a different sports book, I bet $5 on the Dolphins to lose, and I get $9 in return. No matter what happens, I put down $10. And the best case scenario is that at one of these sports books, I'll get my $5 back plus $4. So the best case scenario is that I will lose $1. You're better off not betting if you're literally guaranteed to lose. And the same thing applies here. You can't possibly think that a challenge where you cannot win either way, either via losing a timeout and a challenge, or via giving the Falcons a 12-yard advantage and putting them in field goal range in a 3-point gain, is a good idea. If you don't think that, then I don't know what to tell you. I want to give you a bizarre comparison of what this is like, but if you've seen the show SpongeBob SquarePants, you might know where I'm going with this one. Okay, remember the episode of SpongeBob where Mr. Krabs takes Mrs. Puff out to a fancy restaurant on a date? After the date is done, Mr. Krabs gets handed the bill, which is $100. At that point, Mr. Krabs decides to do the dumbest thing and challenge the fact that this was actually his bill, because this couldn't possibly be right. If he loses the challenge, you just know that he's going to be barred from ever coming back to that restaurant again, and is going to be kicked out of the restaurant immediately. However, if he wins the challenge, which he did, he's going to get his actual bill, which turned out to be a whopping $100,000. So either way, by challenging the bill, Mr. Krabs was going to lose. He was either going to be permanently barred from the restaurant and thrown out, with the possibility of being put in jail for refusing to leave and for trespassing at that point, or he was going to pay a significantly higher sum of money than he already was going to. And that's what this challenge by this man, Todd Bowles, was like. Either way, you were going to lose. Either you were going to lose a challenge and lose a timeout, or you were going to give the Falcons yardage in the process. The fact that the play in question was so blatantly obvious was just the icing on the top, because you could make the legitimate argument that this was one of the worst challenges in NFL history. There were no pros. It was all cons. If you don't throw the flag, the Falcons have it facing 2nd and 18 at the 46, and you have all your timeouts and challenges. If you do throw the flag, the Falcons either have it facing 2nd and 18 at the 46, with you not having all your timeouts, or the Falcons are in field goal range facing 2nd and 6. You are screwing yourself no matter what. There was nothing, and I truly mean it, nothing to be gained from this decision whatsoever. Now, after the game between these two teams behind me right here, Todd Bowles did not speak to the press for that long. He only spoke for 4 minutes, and that includes the time it took walking up to the podium, the time it took leaving the podium, and his opening statements. So, understandably, there weren't a whole lot of questions that were asked. That meant that no reporter asked Todd Bowles the question of why the heck he challenged this play. So we will never know the answer in all likelihood as to why Todd Bowles challenged a play where he had absolutely nothing to gain and everything to lose regardless of what the outcome was. Having said that, I mean, do I even need to say anything else? I mean, this was one of the worst challenges I've ever seen. I'm convinced that Todd Bowles is just Mike McCarthy on a different team. He's bad in game management. He's bad at knowing what to call timeouts. He's bad at the challenge flag. He wins games somehow despite all that, but he's just bad at in-game situations. He's Mike McCarthy minus the Super Bowl ring. I don't even know what to say anymore. He's just Todd Bowles. He's just Todd freaking Bowles. So what do we learn from all of this? Just a general life lesson. If you cannot benefit in any way whatsoever from doing something, whether it works out or not, then don't do it. Just don't do it. If you're thinking about challenging something, and by winning the challenge, you actually benefit the opponent, then maybe you shouldn't challenge it. If you're thinking about challenging something that's blatantly obvious, that will never have a chance in the world of getting overturned, then maybe you shouldn't challenge it. And if you're thinking about challenging something that will hurt your team regardless of the outcome, and where there is no positive to the situation, regardless of if you win it or not, then maybe keep the flag in your pocket. If you really want to throw something, throw a football on the sideline or something. Throw a cup of Gatorade down. Do anything. Just don't throw the challenge flag, especially when said challenge looks like one of the dumbest of all time. Because when all these elements are in play, you can't exactly be surprised when this play backfires. Talk about a dumb decision. Be sure to like and subscribe if you have not done so already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and check out my other channels, JG8 for the history of college football, JG7 for the history of baseball, and JG9 News, where we talk about all things happening in the NFL. Join me every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we'll play live NFL trivia for cash prizes. And make sure to join me live, as we're on stream just about every single day. And thanks to all our Patreon members and our YouTube members for helping out the channel. See how you become a member and show your support financially in the description down below.